What's up, guys? It's your boy Ray coming at you live from somewhere. And today I wanted to talk about not running it back. I wanted to chat about why Denver might want to consider not running it back, and what that might look like. I think there's a few different reasons for that. The first being, in my mind, is you're already not running it back in a way. If your idea of running it back was keeping the court, just keeping everybody together and paying everybody and just trying to keep it going as long as you can, well, Denver is already a ways away from that still being an option. KCP is gone. Michael Porter's gone, and those are the guys that you want a championship with. So there is a degree to which I think it's just kind of an in for a penny, in for a pound type of situation. The second reason, I think, is that it's expensive. Running it back is expensive. And for Denver and where they are financially, if they wanted to, as much as it is a little gross, duck the tax this season, they could get out of the repeater penalty. And I think that would go a long way for their willingness to subsequently go out and spend money, right, in a number of future years. And if you're thinking about Jokic's career as something that is going to have a longer term than just 1 or 2 seasons, if you think Nicole can play until he's 35, 36 years old, which I do believe, and even just as long as he wants to, I think he's going to be a great player. There is some appeal to the idea of, okay, we take this year, get under the tax, and then we can kind of get back to really going for it. The third aspect of this, and I think this is really the meatier discussion point, is that it's possible they want to, I broke down a lot of why I think the Nuggets worked and why the Murray Jokic dynamic worked and what it took to supplement those players with the help that they need and the kind of skill sets that they need. Well, maybe you want something different. Maybe you want to go to a more egalitarian offense, something that's a little bit more, everybody kind of touches the ball more equally. It's not so, maybe you want to go to something where there's more ball movement, where you are looking for cutters and screeners and guys running off of those sorts of actions, for Jokic to find, and you want to base things out of that. Well, it's hard to do that when you have Murray making almost as much as Jokic, because, at least in my mind, if you're going to take Murray off of the ball, and ultimately what that ends up meaning is you're going to reduce his usage rate. I think the hope is that he can learn those skills and kind of do his best Steph Curry impression, where when he's facing pressure, okay, now he's getting off the ball, he's running off a bunch of screens. I haven't seen that. My personal experience when Jamal has been off balls to this point in his career is that he tends to disengage. But if you want to buy that he can make that adjustment, I understand. However, I think it becomes a little bit dicey when you talk about a guy making $50 million a year and he's not really producing on a level of volume that befits that price tag. If Denver had Jokic making all, supermax 50, $60 million a year, and then you've got 3 or 4 guys next to him all making between 20 and $30 million a year, I think that makes a lot more sense that, yeah, they would have a bit more of an equal pecking order in the offense. But it is difficult, I think, to say we're going to find a bunch of other players who can also create for themselves and for others and kind of shake things up in that way, while you have the financial restrictions that you are in the moment. And that's not just Christian Brown. It's not just Cam Johnson. It's some of it's Aaron Gordon, who I think makes a lot of money for a guy that hasn't had like 16, 20 consecutive games over the last few years, something like that. It's a lot of money to pay Jamal to just be an off ball guy and then have to go out and get another point guard to say you can play with him. And in a lot of ways, I don't even think it can just be a point guard, um, because Jamal isn't exactly a pure two either. He has good size for a point guard, but I don't think when you compare him to, we're talking about Peyton Watson at shooting guard. Imagine Peyton Watson guarding Jamal. Imagine that matchup. It's a bit of a size mismatch for him, and I think that's going to be increasingly true across the league as teams get longer and more athletic on the perimeter. All that is to say, if you have Jamal Murray and insert true point guard here, and he's a little small, and he's primarily a passer, he's probably not going to be a great defender. We've always admired like the Lonzo Ball archetype, and I think there's a real reason why. It's that Lonzo, when he was in his prime, had a certain level of, he had shooting guard size. So defensively, he can kind of slot in and still play the two, while offensively, he's good enough as a passer and initiator of offense that you can give Murray that opportunity off ball, but at the same time was enough of a shooter at his peak where you could still have Murray on ball and someone like Lonzo Ball off ball, and it's okay. That kind of guy is expensive, and that's going to be tough to manage. So I think those three things are the main reasons why you might not want to run it back. And in that case, to me, I think it makes the most sense to really break it down. I'm not saying trade Murray and Jokic, Murray and Gordon for nothing, but I think you have to look around, just read the room and take stock of what offers you can get for Jamal, take stock of what offers you can get for Aaron, and see if there's something you can do where you acquire. I think it's a little bit redundant to say you're going to go out and trade Jamal Murray for, say, like a Donovan Mitchell, someone who's really similar to Jamal in a lot of ways, because even if you think there's a better version of Jamal out there, you're still going to have similar dynamics. You're still going to have similar financial difficulties if you trade for Donovan Mitchell. You're still going to have similar weaknesses as a team, and maybe Mitchell's a little bit better, but at the same time, your chemistry probably takes a hit. And I think you're probably changing stuff just to change stuff in that way. So I'd like to see them, if they did trade Jamal, look for a star who is, if they play the same position, maybe they played a little bit differently, who maybe brings a little bit more individual athleticism to the table. And especially if you can get that in a point guard who you can get other assets along with. So I think about a guy like Kyrie Irving, where if the Mavericks want to get younger and they have some assets to attach to Irving, I think that dynamic would still be a good tandem for Jokic, that anybody who can get into the paint and create in the way that Kyrie does is going to be able to find Jokic really easily. And of course, Kyrie can shoot, Kyrie can pass, Kyrie can dribble. He's very reliable in that way, and is even maybe a little bit less pressable when facing defensive pressure. You do get older as a team, and I think it kind of, but I would think you would want to get a little bit cheaper as well. If you can do that with the intention of bringing Kyrie and keeping him in Denver on a lower value deal than the $15 million you're putting towards Murray. You get some assets along with him, and you can move them or use them to kind of flesh out the rest of the team in a way that makes more sense, in a way that you can afford. I think that could be beneficial. Another guy I think about is, I know this sounds crazy, De'Aaron Fox. Just talking about value, Jamal Murray, I think, is had one of the best seasons he could have going forward. I don't think he's going to have a better year than what he just had. Maybe he could have a better playoffs, but I think to have a better playoffs, he needs a better supporting cast, and we've talked about those limitations. If you're the Spurs and you're willing to say, we will bring in Murray, and we're doing so because we just want to get off of Fox's deal. We just want someone who's, he's been there. He's won championships with other bigs. I think there's some appeal there. And if there was a certain amount of assets the Spurs would be willing to give up to make that swap, I think there could be something to that. And maybe if you're the Nuggets, you're buying the idea that De'Aaron Fox had a bad year, had a bad offseason, had a bad postseason, I should say, that he's not healthy. And that, with his speed and athleticism, you can kind of create a little bit of a different dynamic for Jokic that reflects something a little bit more like what Russ gave to Denver, while still providing, he's a little bit younger, he's at least a better shooter than Russ. I'm going to give him that. And again, if you can acquire more assets around him, I think that's good. But I think what's more likely, if you were to trade Jamal, is you're looking for a star at another position. I would think about I know this sounds, none of these options are perfect, and there's always going to be some flaws. And I, again, reiterate that because you should be looking for trades you can make where you bring somebody back, but you can also get other assets along with that player. So they're going to have question marks. But I think about guys like Kevin Durant. I think about guys like Anthony Davis. Yes, they're old. Yes, they have injury concerns, but everybody has injury concerns. I almost feel like Jokic can work with just about anyone, and he made it work with Mason Plumlee. That was a duo that worked. And I think when you're talking about things that benefit Jokic, again, it's length, it's athleticism, it's guys who can space the floor. If you loved Michael Porter, I don't see how you can not like the idea, at least on the court, of Kevin Durant as the kick out instead of Michael Porter, as maybe even somebody who could carry a unit on his own when Jokic is out, in a way that you didn't feel comfortable giving those keys to Michael Porter. That said, are all those ideas fun? No. Are you probably also going to have to make further trades to rebalance the roster if you do that? Yes. You might have to trade Aaron too. If you trade Jamal for a forward or a big, you probably have to trade Aaron for a guard. That's just the reality of the situation. But either way, in terms of like what I'm talking about right now or what I spoke about yesterday, I think those are viable options. If you want to go in and you want to commit to the model that works for Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, I think you can do that. If you want to take a step back, reset yourself financially, maybe get a little bit cheaper, try to seek out another star and get some deeper, a deeper stock of assets and resources, I get that too. But what I don't want to see is kind of a half-assed, hopefully they don't mind that I cursed this late in the video, that they really go commit to one direction or the other. If we just kind of shed a few $1 million of salary, maybe we use the 2026 first to dump Zeke Naji, or we dump Cam for nothing just to get off the money. I just don't see how that accomplishes either goal. It doesn't bring you any closer to a championship in the short term, but I also don't think it brings you any closer to a championship in the long term, in the future. Um, I know this is getting a little bit longer, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope you'll have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Let me know what you think. You can leave a comment. I'd appreciate that. Also, if you want to leave a like, a little subscribble, it helps me out. Shows me what you're interested in and what you're interested in hearing about, and also helps the algorithm show it to other people. So I really appreciate that. Anyway, have a great day, and as we get toward the draft, we'll get more into concrete trade options, draft options. Maybe they trade up, maybe they trade back. Just a little tease. So anyway, you'll have a great day. I'll see you next time.